Argentina has one of the world's most mind-boggling economies. Recurring crises, skyrocketing inflation, and a flourishing underground market for dollars have plagued Argentina for a long time. And with Javier Milei winning the presidential elections last year, he has a mountain to climb if he wishes to fix the country. So what challenges does Argentina's economy really face? Stay tuned, as in this video we'll be diving into just that. Let's start with one of the biggest problems for Argentines today: triple-digit inflation. While soaring prices receive the most media attention, they are far from the only issue that Argentine officials are fighting. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, year-on-year inflation rate hit above 100% in February last year, marking the first such reading in 3 decades. The National Institute of Statistics and Censuses reports that the rate has remained above that level since then, rising steadily to 138% in September 2023. Argentina currently has the highest per capita consumption of red meat in the world, and the rising cost of beef and other meats has contributed significantly to the country's high inflation rate. According to official statistics, the price of beef cuts in Buenos Aires, the largest city in Argentina, increased by 72% in the 12 months leading up to June 2022. In response, the government instituted price control initiatives and, towards the end of 2022, directed businesses to halt price increases for thousands of items, including food, drink, and personal care items. During a press conference, an official from the Ministry of the Economy mentioned that certain popular cuts of meat will experience a 30% price drop, but no other information was given regarding the matter. Along with the country's rising inflation, Argentina's pesos are significantly falling. The recent devaluation of the Argentinian peso has hugely contributed to and been a sign of the country's economic problems. Argentina's central bank controls the currency, and after ultra-conservative far-right candidate Milei won a crucial primary vote in August, he promised to abolish the peso and replace it with the dollar. In response, officials depreciated the currency by 18% in one day, to 350 pesos per dollar. But many resorted to using a freely floating, underground currency called the dollar blue, which trades closer to 600 pesos per dollar instead of accessing that official exchange rate. Many Argentinians are now demanding wages in line with the CPI, and the presence of several currency rates has weakened the government and increased the possibility of hyperinflation being entrenched. The lack of credibility of a very complicated exchange rate regime generates a huge gap between the official and parallel rates, and the widespread indexation of wages and pensions to inflation creates inertia. The Central Bank of Argentina devalued the Argentine peso by 18% in August, which, according to Bonilla, translated instantly into 2-digit monthly inflation rates. But here lies a big issue. Dollarization might only seem reasonable on the surface. The Argentine economy has already embraced a high level of dollarization due to the lack of trust in the peso, and the idea of full dollarization doesn't seem too far-fetched. Given the track record of officials, it seems unwise to entrust them with discretion. In theory, dollarization will significantly decrease inflation, but it'll also tightly link the country with US monetary policies with no clear way out. It has the potential to lead to a significant contraction and crash, all while diverting attention from the challenging task of repairing the economy. Argentina's economic growth will be closely tied to maintaining a current account surplus and attracting capital inflows under the dollarization system. This is possible if the economy is doing well, there are good business opportunities, the legal system is stable, and the currency is currently worth less than it should be. But unfortunately for Argentina, things aren't looking great. What happened in the 1990s and early 2000s is a terrible example. A lot of progress was made in the 1990s under the convertibility plan to end hyperinflation and bring back growth. However, deficits and debt were not cut back over the course of the decade. With a strong dollar, falling product prices, and the crises in Mexico, Asia, and then Brazil in 1999, Argentina lost its ability to compete with other countries. Unemployment and the current account gap went through the roof, while growth fell. Argentina couldn't pay its foreign debts and lost access to the markets. Because Argentina owed a lot of money to other countries in dollars, investors sold their Argentinian pesos. As a result, interest rates went up and our out of control. Strong capital controls were put in place, and the plan to make the currency convertible fell apart, causing a lot of economic, social, and political chaos. Although the convertibility plan wasn't full dollarization, it still serves as a lesson. Even though it helped Argentina's inflation rate, it wasn't well supported by macroeconomic policies, which led to its unsustainable rise and eventual collapse. The risks and difficulties of dollarization would be identical, which leads us to the flaws in a complete dollarization plan. Adopting dollarization requires, well, dollars, and Argentina's net reserves are negative right. Adopting dollarization requires, well, dollars, and Argentina's net reserves are negative right now. The authorities' diminished capacity to serve as a lender of last resort leaves the financial system even more susceptible to shocks. There are only tenuous ties between the Argentine and American economies. To break the vicious cycle of excessive borrowing, hyperinflation, default, and unrest, Argentina requires massive fiscal austerity. Multiple currency rates, capital controls, and other limitations do not benefit Argentina. The country requires liberalization, but it must be gradual and comprehensive. It's possible that a stabilization based on dollarization would lower inflation faster than just cutting back on government spending, stopping the creation of credit and keeping the currency flexible. But if there isn't a plan to get out of the dollarization, the economy could fall apart much more severely, like what happened after the convertibility plan, than if there was a role for currency flexibility. In any case, changing the way money works will not be enough to make the economy and currency stable. In light of Argentina's dismal economic track record, it's understandable to be skeptical that the country's leaders will have the courage to fix their problems on their own, rather than placing the blame on the IMF. And to make matters even worse, Argentina is being crushed under mountains of debt. Debts have seriously hurt Argentina's economy, especially in recent years. Government officials worked out a plan with the IMF to avoid the country's 9th default. Nonetheless, concerns regarding the deficit have persisted since then. Argentina and its creditors have come to a deal to restructure about $65 billion in sovereign debt, ending in a deadlock in negotiations that will help the country get out of default and putting an end to fears of a damaging and long-lasting legal standoff. The Economic Ministry said that it had struck an agreement with key creditors. The parties had agreed to modify certain payment dates and legal provisions in order to improve upon what had been hailed as the final proposal. This agreement was to help erase the memory of Argentina's 2001-2002 massive default, which sparked more than a decade of litigation and made the country an outcast in international financial markets. Argentina has a lengthy history of credit crises. Therefore, most banks are hesitant to certify government-issued bonds as investment grade. As a result, some of these bonds are now trading at about 30 cents on the dollar. But poor governmental decisions aren't the only reason behind Argentina's mind-boggling economy. That's right, not all of Argentina's economic problems have originated with the government. According to experts, farmers could lose $14 billion worth of soy, corn, and wheat due to the devastating effects of the country's drought. The worst drought the South American nation has seen in over 60 years has forced repeated severe reductions to maize and soybean harvest predictions. World Bank statistics show that agriculture contributed more than 6% to Argentina's GDP in 2018. Since exporting grain has also been a significant source of other currencies, the drought is most likely making the peso's instability and the nation's economic problems worse. To be fair to Argentina, some of the issues are beyond policymakers' control, said Kimberly Sperfechter, speaking on behalf of Capital Economics. There's been a constant drought, which weighs heavily on agriculture, which is both an important part of the economy and crucial to bringing in FX reserves, said the economist. Argentina has, in the past decades, been experiencing a rolling recession. The fact that a nation with so many issues has experienced economic downturns is not surprising. Argentina appears to be on the verge of a recession, according to most estimates. Recent surveys of analysts have led the central bank to predict a 2.8% decline in the country's GDP this year, even though activity hit a new low in May, the lowest level since 2020. Additionally, the economic crisis has a personal dimension. Half of the country's population lives below the poverty line, and if the economy experiences another slump, that number is certain to increase. Protests against the government's inaction in the face of skyrocketing inflation and stagnant growth drew thousands of people to the streets last year. This would be the sixth recession that Argentina's economy has experienced in the last 10 years, should it happen. And all of this has rendered the Central Bank of Argentina ineffective. The Central Bank of Argentina is having a hard time, and the monetary officials can't do much to fix the economy at this point. The central bank has increased interest rates to an impressive 133%, but that is barely faster than the rate at which prices are rising, so it is unlikely that this will stop inflation. Because of the increasing debt crisis, the government has limited access to loans. Most economists believe that it has asked the bank to print more money in order to pay for spending projects, which will only increase inflation. But the worst part about all this is the broken political system. Despite serving as the Minister of the Economy for the last year, Massa has been unable to control inflation or revive growth. His Peronist party has supported him in 10 victories out of 13 elections. Milei, on the other hand, is an outsider who appears to take cues from extreme right-wing politicians like Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil and Donald Trump. Adopting the dollar and doing away with Argentina's central bank are two of his planned initiatives, but economists are concerned that this might bring the economy even closer to default. Maybe the new president will step in the right direction, but it's easy to see that Argentina will likely continue to struggle for a bit longer. So, do you think Milei's government will finally put an end to Argentina's economic troubles, or will his policies only further the damage? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new to the channel.